dropping of the first atomic bomb was on August 6, 1945, and it was a historic event, not just for the two countries directly involved, the United States and Japan, but also for the world. Just 3 days later, on August 9, 1945, the second atomic bomb would be dropped, destroying another city and hundreds of more lives, and ending World War II. The two bombs were unlike any other bombs the world had ever seen. They were so powerful that within a half-mile of the blast, humans were instantly turned into small lumps of charcoal. Even those who survived the bomb were still plagued with radiation poisoning, which lasted through 4 stages and could take 2 to 20 years to present. The first stage included severe nausea, vomiting, and fever. The second stage included bloody diarrhea, a loss of appetite, persistent fever, and hair loss. The third stage, if one survived past the first 2 stages, was a progressive weakening due to defective white cell formations, which left the body vulnerable to random diseases and infections. Lastly, there was the fourth stage, which was radiation-induced cancer, mainly leukemia. Even if someone was lucky enough to survive all 4 stages, they still had to witness all the people around them suffering. And back in 1945, we did not know yet the effects that radiation had on the body, so the illnesses seemed mysterious. The effects that radiation had on the body is now well known and studied, but what was not studied was the effects that the bomb had on mental health. The effects on mental health deal with both the experience of living through the bomb and the effect that radiation could have on mental health. It is still very hard to research this because survivors and their families were stigmatized, so other survivors do not want to speak out for fear of social rejection. So many survivors kept their experiences and their stories to themselves. This stigma was so pervasive that many women who were survivors of radiation illness were seen as aggressors and polluters, and it was difficult for them to marry or have children. However, we do have some stories, like that John Hersey gathered from 6 bomb survivors for an issue of The New Yorker in 1946. More stories have also surfaced since then. One of the most common things throughout all of these stories is the acute anxiety that was the dominant reaction to the explosion. In one interview done by Hersey, he is told of a story of a 15-year-old man who was uninjured by the explosion, but who stood weeping at the window of a burning building. When an attempt was made to rescue him, his only response was, "Leave me here to die." And after he was forcibly removed and taken away, he managed to break away and run back into the fire. This man was obviously not acting in a sane way, and was also obviously under anxiety and shock. Some similarities that other stories share are that they all spoke of memories of the injured, helplessness at not being able to ease their suffering, sensory recollections of the A-bomb, the zombie-like motions of the victims. Another thing is that most people note that they continue to hear, see, and smell the bomb to this day. Joanne Silberner has studied the persistent psychological issues that to this day continue to plague survivors, which include refusal to leave one's home, inability to hold down a job, nightmares, depression, and anger. These issues continue to interrupt the lives of survivors even though the bomb was dropped over 60 years ago. Robert Lifton has also studied the psychological impact the bomb had had on survivors and has found 5 psychological themes: overwhelmingly undeniable images of grotesque forms of death, guilt for living through the tragedy, psychic numbing and struggle for meaning, a wish to bear witness and have the crimes committed against them acknowledged. It is interesting to also note that many psychologists have compared what happened to the survivors of Hiroshima to the survivors of the Holocaust. Many survivors also feel guilt for having lived through an experience like this, which has been noted throughout other tragedies like the Holocaust. Lifton also notes that the experience of watching people die from the radiation poisoning was also traumatic and detrimental to the survivors' mental health. The horrors the bomb caused did not instantly cease once the explosion was done. Witnessing the event in a bomb, unlike any other, was traumatic enough in itself, but witnessing the death and destruction around them also was traumatic, and not easily forgotten by the survivors. It is still not completely known whether or not the distance from where the bomb was dropped had an impact on mental health of the survivor, or rather if the radiation can affect the mental health of the survivor. One study found that in survivors of both bombs, the distance away from the bomb did play a role in the mental health of survivors. The survivors did not just survive, they were plagued with mental problems and physical problems to this day, and many still worry about getting radiation illness and cancers. It is something that needs to be studied more, and it is something that intrigues me and many others.